Should I hold or should I sell? That's the question many of the 2 million landlords in the UK are asking themselves right now because of a number of factors we're going to look at in this video, including the Labour government's Renters' Rights Bill, which was formerly the Renter Reform Bill suggested by the Conservative government when they were in power. Also the budget coming out in October where there can be changes to capital gains tax, and also things like the abolition of Section 21, which is part of this Renters' Rights Bill. So what does this mean for you and what does it mean for your property investing? So my name's Simon Zutshi. I've been investing in property since 1995. Since 2003, I've been teaching people like you how to become more successful investors. I'm the author of Property Magic, the Amazon #1 property bestseller, and the founder of the Property Investors Network, which is the largest network in the UK with 50 meetings around the country every month for property investors. Now, I have my ear to the ground at all of those occasions, and so I hear a lot of chat, a lot of talk about what landlords are really thinking about, their concerns, their problems, and some of that I'm going to share with you in this video today. So if you are already a landlord and you're asking yourself these questions, or maybe you're new to property and you're thinking, well, if all these other landlords are selling up and getting out, is it really still a good time to get into property investing in the UK or not? Well, my answer is yes, absolutely. It's a great time to be in property. However, there might be some landlords who have some of their properties they need to sell. So we've got all the factors that might come into this. And obviously it goes without saying, this is not financial advice. This is just education to get you thinking. And whenever you make any big financial decisions, you should obviously consult your experts such as your financial advisor, your mortgage broker, your accountant, your lawyer, etc., to get the proper legal advice. But I want to educate you and stimulate your thinking so you've got the right questions to ask those advisors. So let's talk about people who already have an existing portfolio and some of the changes that are coming in and how they might impact you. So first of all, let's talk about this Renters' Rights Bill, which was the Renters' Reform Bill, initially suggested by the Conservative government at the time. Earlier in the year, they didn't get it through Parliament, and obviously Labour have come back and they're kicking it into the net. Now, one of the biggest things on there is the abolition of the Section 21 no-fault eviction. So in the past, you could decide, I don't want to rent the property anymore, I want to get these people out, serve them a Section 21. They might have really no problem, they hadn't defaulted on their payments, you just want to get them out, you go through court and you get the property back. That is now being removed. Now obviously we can still get people out using things like Section 8 if people aren't paying their rent, but it's just a shame that particular piece of legislation is no longer available. And really the Labour Party and also the Conservatives want to give more rights and support to tenants. I actually think, although tenants might not agree with this, I actually think that things are kind of stacked in the way of the tenant anyway, but it's definitely moving more in favour of the tenant, which is why many landlords are thinking about selling up. But the reality is, we don't have enough accommodation in the UK. The two major political parties have both said, and they pledged in their election manifestos, they'd help create the environment for us as developers to build 1.5 million homes over the next 5 years, which by the way, is never going to happen. But that's how many properties are needed based on the supply and demand in the UK. Because we live on this fairly small island with a limited amount of accommodation and an increasing population. So over time in the UK, rents and values generally go up. Remember, they don't always go up. We live in a cyclical market that comes up and comes down. We certainly saw a little bit of a correction in 2022 and 2023 as we came to the top of the post-COVID bubble. It was the unexpected property boom. That was obviously fueled by the increasing interest rates that started to happen in February 22. So think about this. We've had interest rates start to go up. That means many landlords who own a property, they're making less cash flow, less profit every single month. Add to that the fact that all this new and changes to legislation is coming in place. And that's why many existing landlords are selling up, because they're thinking, is it really worth it anymore? Particularly if they've had some really good capital growth over the last 12 years. They think maybe I should sell up and maybe I should look for some alternative investments, other things to do with my money. People might be putting money into cryptocurrencies, investing in businesses, stocks and shares. They might be paying down other debt, whatever it might be. But this is why many people are getting out of the property market. Now, we also need to understand that no matter what's happening in the economy, what's happening in the political scene, we always have people who are new coming in to an industry and people who are exiting, who are retiring. It just so happens for the last 7 years, there have been more people retiring than coming in. And I think the 7-year indicator is really because in 2015, the government at the time was Conservative, announced the introduction of Section 24. Now, this was where they said they wanted to change the way that we as property investors are taxed. They said if we own property in our own name, which always used to be the most tax efficient way of doing it, and if you have a mortgage, which most investors do, and we're a higher rate taxpayer, which not all but many investors are, it means we're going to pay a lot more tax on our properties. So we had a lot of people who had properties in their own name, they've had them for a number of years, and they thought, you know what, this is not really going to work. My single let properties are not going to work for anymore. They started to sell them. And that was actually enforced in April 2017, phased over 4 years. And to be honest, the first couple of years, many landlords probably didn't really notice the effect of that. It's only when it came to 2022 where that was 100% in force, and then the interest rates went up. What it meant was some existing landlords had properties where what they were paying in interest each month was more than was coming in rent. So they were cash flow negative. However, because the tax is calculated in a different way, it meant that at the end of the year, they'd have to pay some money to the tax man. So you can understand why many of those landlords are saying, right, that's it, I'm getting out of the game, I'm selling my property. Now, obviously, one thing you can do if you're an existing landlord is take some single let properties and maybe you can change how they are used, change the type of tenants and the frequency of the tenants. So if it's a big enough property, you might be able to change it from a single let into an HMO, a house of multiple occupation, where you rent out the different rooms. If it's a smaller property, depending on location, you could turn it into maybe serviced accommodation. Now, HMOs are a very highly regulated type of property. Serviced accommodation wasn't regulated, but regulation is coming to the world of serviced accommodation. And I think that's going to cause many amateur investors to get out of serviced accommodation. I think regulation is good. I think it raises standards. I think you know exactly where you are. It levels the playing field as well. And actually, I think because of that, there'll be less people doing serviced accommodation, which is probably a good thing. Because right now, speaking to the people I know around the country, the general consensus is that as far as serviced accommodation is concerned at the moment, there's a little bit of an oversupply. What that means is that the rates you can get have come down. The occupancy rates have also come down as well. So at the moment, I don't think service accommodation is as good as it was maybe a few years ago. However, with the new regulations coming in around SA, I think some of the amateurs will step out the market. Those who stay in the market, as long as you're doing things properly, will probably see an increase in rates, an increase in occupancy as well. So actually, I think SA will come back and be a very good, strong cash flow property strategy, as are HMOs. So one thing you can do is take your existing properties and change the way they're used. However, I do this each year. I look at all my properties. I look at what the cash flow is. I look at what problems I had with the property, and I look at the return on investment and the return on equity. A return on equity is the annual profit divided by the money I would make if I sold that property, cleared the mortgage, paid the tax on it, and I could then invest that elsewhere. And when you look at the return on equity, sometimes the return on equity, i.e. the return on the money tied up in the property, is very, very low compared to the return on investment, which is what you looked at when you first bought the property. So every so often, I might sell a few of my properties, pay the tax, and take that money and reinvest it in better properties. And I think that's something that all of us as investors should do over time to review our portfolio. Now we need to take any political and legislation changes into account as well. Because maybe when, for example, when I'm selling properties that many were owned in my own name, I'm now putting them in a company structure moving forward, because that at the moment is not affected by Section 24. Now we have this big budget coming up at the end of October, and the Labour government have been hinting there are going to be some big changes here. One of the biggest changes could be to capital gains tax. Now I want you to listen very carefully, especially if you're an existing landlord. When they bring the changes in, they're talking about potentially now no one knows what's going to happen, but it's what people feel and believe. There's going to be an increase in capital gains tax, which is the tax you pay when you sell an asset, such as a property or shares. And in property at the moment, as I record this video, if you're a lower rate taxpayer selling a property, you pay 18% capital gains tax. If you're a higher rate taxpayer, it's currently 24%. And that is on the profit from selling the property, not the difference between the value and the mortgage, but it's the difference between the value and the original purchase price, which might be a lot less than the current mortgage. So you pay tax on that. You're allowed to take off capital expenses, buying and selling costs, and capital improvements as well. But what's left over, you pay capital gains tax on. Now, the talk is they might bring it more in line with income tax. And so if you're a higher rate taxpayer, it might go to 40%, or the top level of income tax is even 45%. Or maybe they bring it in line with inheritance tax, which is also 40% tax rate. What that means is if someone sells a property after that budget announcement, and they might say it comes in from the day of the budget, they might give a month's grace. Sometimes when tax changes come in, they say it's the start of the new tax year, which would be April 2025. Now, I very much doubt they're going to do that for the simple reason that if you had all these landlords, potentially hundreds of thousands of landlords who've been thinking about selling their properties, and they suddenly realize if they sell before April 25, they're going to pay a lot less tax. That could cause literally hundreds and hundreds of thousands of properties, maybe even 1 million properties coming onto the market to be sold. That could cause a property market crash. And I don't think the Labour Party want to do that because that would be very bad for the economy as a whole, even though it would, in theory, make property cheaper and so more affordable for people who wanted to buy property. But I really don't think the Labour Party would be foolish enough to do that. So I think they'll probably say that the changes come in from the day of the budget, or maybe they might give a month's grace for sales that are currently going through. They have to exchange and complete maybe within a month. Who knows what they're going to say? So what does that mean? Well, there are some ways that people can sell their properties very quickly. If someone's buying cash, if you're doing vendor finance, which is a fantastic creative strategy, those deals can be done within a matter of weeks because there often aren't mortgages in place. And so it is possible for someone, even when you're watching this video now, if you're watching it straight away. And by the way, I'd always encourage you to hit the bell icon and subscribe to the channel so you always get these timely videos whenever they come out. You don't really want to be watching this video 6 months after it's come out because it's not going to be so relevant. This is a highly relevant right now. So make sure you subscribe, hit the bell icon, and hopefully if you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button as well, and put a comment below. What do you think is going to happen to the budget? I'd love to hear that. But the whole point is, yes, you can sell properties quickly. I think there will be a lot of people who think, you know what, if I've got to pay so much tax selling the property, maybe it's not worth me selling the property anymore. So I'm just going to hold the property and I'm going to rent it out. Now, this is a very personal decision. Should you hold? Should you sell? It very much depends on your long-term plan. Are you trying to build a legacy you're going to give to your kids, or would you rather liquidate your portfolio and use the money elsewhere? And for those people who are new to property, thinking, well, you know, is it still worth investing in property? As long as you know what you're doing, absolutely it's worth investing in property, because all these people who are selling their properties and getting out, we can come and buy some of those and sometimes use creative strategies such as rent to rent or purchase lease option or vendor finance where you're not using a lot of your own money. So with a bit of specialist knowledge, you can actually make more money than the existing owner does from their property that they're considering selling. This is why investing in yourself and educating yourself and becoming aware of the possibilities is so important. Because right now, you don't know what you don't know. And what you don't know is costing you money. It's a great saying by Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. What you know will make you money. What you don't know will cost you money. So I really encourage you to check out the other videos on my YouTube channel. Go and subscribe to the Property Magic podcast, which comes out every Tuesday. It's now an audio podcast and also a video podcast on this channel as well. Look out for that because I've got some great content in there, and we're starting to share some fantastic case studies of some of our students who are doing amazing deals right now in the current market. And that's really important to watch those because it will help build your belief about what's possible and also about what you can do. One of the biggest things that might stop you moving forward is self-doubt. It's questioning, can I actually do this? Well, the reality is other people are doing it if you have the right knowledge and if you keep going and don't give up, you can absolutely achieve it as well. So I hope this has been useful for you. If you have a portfolio, I highly recommend you do that analysis to review the portfolio. Don't worry about what could happen in the future, but when new legislation comes in, we just have to work out how we're going to adapt, how we're going to change, and how we're going to make the most of the opportunity that exists for us right now in the UK property market. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, invest with knowledge, invest with skill.